Welcome to AI to Z. Hosted by Airswift's data science Donny, we delve into artificial intelligence, health tech, and more. Tune in and journey with us into the future.
Well, Joel and Suresh, thank you so much for joining me today on the AI to Z podcast. Really excited to hear much more about yourselves, your journey, and how technology is transforming the world of oil and gas and energy. Now, I guess I'll hand it over to Joel first. If you don't mind, tell me a bit about your background, and then we'll head over to Suresh.
Okay, thanks. Donnie, thank you very much for having us. We've been really excited to be here. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. My name is Joel Albertson, and I'm a mechanical engineer, and I largely worked oil and gas. And then back in 2019, I went to a speech by Alan Finkel, who is the chief scientist of Australia, and he was talking about hydrogen. And so I pretty much decided to form Iris Engineering that day. And we started the next morning doing remote area power systems. So it's easy to think of that as edge of grid or off of grid power systems for communities or companies like a mining company or an oil and gas company. And that's where we started. And what we found along the way when we were developing those systems is that we had to show our stakeholders what it looked like. A lot of people might say, okay, solar, wind, not in my backyard, right? Or they might say, hey, that just looks too complicated. And so Iris Engineering was not only providing the designs, but we had to have that stakeholder engagement that actually brought people into the design process and showed them what the end product was going to look like. So Suresh started incorporating Unreal Engine into our design so we could take our designs and not only make them accurate to the millimeter, but you could walk through them, you could interact with them, you could put them on a terrain and you know exactly where it was going to be and what it was going to look like because it was a photorealistic model. And what we found is that engagement of being able to visualize your design, where it was probably a far stronger market for us than just regular engineering. And so we've really been pursuing that because just imagine you can take a design long before it's even, done, and you can have a photorealistic design that you can play with an Xbox controller, you can put on goggles, you can walk through it, and you can put any level of interactivity that you want to. So you can connect it to design software, you can import just about anything you want to make it as realistic as possible. And that can be instrumentation. You can run your process long before it gets out into the field. And it's at a fraction of the cost of what you might pay for a very cutting edge software. So, and that's some of the real beauties of it. And that's I'll just hand some of the other things over to Suresh, but that's where we started and that's where we're at right now.
My name's Suresh. I'm a instrumentation control electrical engineer. It's got wires. I like to play with it. And I was in oil and gas for about 10 years. So I worked all around Australia and a little bit in Timor. And after a while, I caught up with Joel out of the blue and he told me what he had started and what he was working on, which was a renewables company focusing on hydrogen, wind, solar. And I was like, well, that's really interesting work. And very much like chart your own path, chart your own destiny. So I jumped on board and it's been a real blast because, there's a little bit of when you're a young company seeing what sticks to the wall. And one of the most interesting things we've found, which happened quite organically as Joel would have mentioned with, people requesting a model initially saying, what will this look like? To being constant repeat work just from a model standpoint, but then people wanting that extra functionality. What can we do with lighting? What can we do with operating before we operate? What can we do with training? Interactive modules? And there's just so much we can do because in this space,
rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's absolutely a rabbit hole. The answer to any question is always yes. And that's what I love is that creative aspect of being given a problem and then solving it uniquely for that first time. And then you're able to offer it to everyone else. So it's been a really good journey. And we have lined up a few things to show you today, which I'm hoping you can have a bit of fun with. A few accidents we can create and a bit of interactivity. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Fantastic. And I do have a question for, I think maybe Joel. What year was it when you started Iris?
officially 2014. I was doing some independent consulting work for like offshore platforms and stuff like that, engineering design, and I'll say yard review. But it really took off in 2019 when I decided like, okay, it's time to actually take all the skills I've learned from engineering and capital projects and put that to good use on, I'll say, some global problems. So that just how can we make energy cheaper and more efficient, and so that's really what I wanted to get into. So how do we bring all that skills into that? And I might say what we've done, like kind of in a nutshell, is we do use some pretty interesting AI techniques and AI, but for the most part, we've been combining gaming and movie technology with engineering, and that's just it's incredible. And what you can do with your engineering designs, and then taking it all the way to operability, it's remarkable, and it's, like I said, it costs a fraction of what it used to be.
And there's a bit of humor here in that, we're around ex-MHF, major hazard facilities, oil and gas. We did a fair bit of work in renewables, but then with a lot of our modeling, we found ourselves back in energy and oil and gas.
Funny how that happens.
Yeah. So I'll just get cracking in a model, and I'll just yab away while I'm controlling it.
Well, I'll throw in lots of comments too. What Suresh is going to show you as he's loading that up is some of the things too, is sometimes you can design something great, but can you really build it? And so what we've got is some examples of constructability that we've taken through design review stage into constructability. But anyway, take it away, Suresh.
Here we have Jim. He's an Iris engineering employee, and he needs to drive this skid, which is a motor compressor, down to the installation site. So he jumps in his truck. This is me controlling it now. And I'm now driving the truck down to the installation site. Here we can check for clearances. We can check for obstruction. We can simulate this and then record it and then show what the work front will be like. Here we can see that there's already a truck ready to offload. So Jim, he's going to jump out now, and he's going to now operate the crane.
Something that stick out to me is just the realism, the lighting, the different shadows, just the overall feel of the entire, example. It really does feel so realistic. It's quite hard to describe, if I'm honest.
Thanks for that, Donnie. And we can control, because this is a gaming engine, and Suresh is going to get to that later, we can control every aspect of the lighting, the weather, and make it appropriate to your longitude and latitude. So that can be the Arctic, or this can be, just south of Bamako and the tip of the Sahara. There's quite a few different things you can do this. And in particular, this was a job that we're walking through here that we were provided some very rudimentary CAD files, and we made it photorealistic, which is what you're going to see.
Yeah, so he's got a lot of tickets, this operator. Now he's a crane operator. And as you can see, I'm in the cockpit of the crane, and I'm going to proceed with my lift. There is actually an element of physics here. So as I move the boom, you'll see there's a bit of movement in the load, and it'll swing around. And if it's a windy day, then it'll swing more. I can change my view to that of the load. And so we can change our view however we wish to view the load from any aspect. As I said, I've enabled physics here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very gently ram it into this railing. And what we're going to find is it'll bump up against the railing, and then it won't go any further. So this is almost like a bit of a training tool, a bit of, you can do simulations to say, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? You can even make the load decouple and topple if you wanted to. But for the purpose of the simulation, I'm just going to bring it up a little bit higher. And I'm going to go back to my cockpit. Now, as I take it over, we can see, we completely lose visibility of the load as it goes over the structure. So then we can have a conversation, maybe we need a spotter in a certain location. What is your lift plan? How are you controlling this, this lift? Keep carrying it over.
That's a lot of sweat.
I just put a little physics into it.
Yeah, maybe a little much, but that does show you the versatility. You can put as much or as you can change those factors, and clearly the crane operator wouldn't be driving it that fast.
Well, and sometimes you never know. It's those, kind of extreme examples that you probably want to test more than the everyday kind of, situations.
Agreed.
Yeah, so you can kind of see in an instant, what requirements you would have for the lift, what additional controls you will have, what the risks are, because you may not think about, well, what are all these pipes and services doing? Are any of them online? Until you see the load actually does have play in it. And then what is the worst outcome you could have there? So, we can keep lowering it down until we create an incident where it starts to line up with the floor, because you would normally have someone supporting that to orient it in.
And you're operating this from like a game controller, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so it's very easy to pick up. If you've ever picked up a game controller before, you can pick this up very easily. So
Donnie, just imagine you've designed, company X has designed a facility, or you're an oil and gas company. You've designed an offshore facility. You want to walk through it. You can, at 50% design review, you can walk through as an operator. You can go touch equipment. You can make it photorealistic. So not only can you have a design review, you can actually walk through it, and you can do this with everybody at one time, or you could have the model published ahead of time. So rather than someone going through the old school, two-dimensional drawings, why not play it like a video game? And then you can go through and flag everything that you see. It makes life so much easier. A lot of us, some of us actually, I'd say after an engineering and construction career, you can look at two-dimensional drawings or even a Navisworks model, and you can get the gist of it. But this is just a good picture is worth 1,000 words.
It's the same, but very, very different
Oh,
in
yeah.
theory.
And it's very user-friendly.
Mitigating a lot of learning time, up speed, uptick. How long does it take for someone to kind of understand the walkthrough and essentially where everything is and be at that comfortable 100% capacity, when you could really kind of swing that from day one? They can know exactly where everything is, be very comfortable. It's almost like bring it to life in a sense, but that could be huge just in the production aspect of things.
Oh, absolutely. And then as the model progresses, you can start adding functionality. So you're going to run your softwares for things like computational fluid dynamics. And so now, besides just the crane lift, you could apply that to any piece of moving equipment. But if you can apply your design softwares to this too, so then you test your model in your process. Well, you can go up and you can read an instrument, or you can touch that instrument and you can get the drawings behind it. And that would translate all the way into operations mode, where you can have all the manufacturing data, who ordered it, what was ordered, suppliers, whatever you want. The sky is the limit, and they're not expensive add-ons either.
It can jump, can move, can literally almost do a little bit of everything. I saw it. Don't think I was going to leave that out, Suresh.
Oh,
yeah. So there's a bit of jank in the model, and what that is this is a very early model for a site, and there is a bit of alignment, but you may not having the walkthrough model and allowing your operator to actually walk it down is you'll find these things. And not to mention that this character, he has a physical volume, and if he isn't fitting somewhere, if he's bending his head, you'll find out really quick. What I wanted to show you here is that I've just walked my man up to the top, and in a pinch, I can become the crane. I can see where that spotter is. And in a pinch, I can go back to my man, and you can see his view of the load. So you have a lot of flexibility here to plan your scenarios.
Yeah, this is really, really detailed. Like that's just it really sticks out to me. Every time I see this, I think it's been 2 times now that I've been able to, see some examples from you all, and it just the amount of detail and just how realistic it looks. It just really is quite insane. You literally create a video game. That's where I love that you really highlight that, because there's nothing more you can use to describe it except for literally turning a real idea into a real life simulation without essentially even breaking ground. And you could walk through it, go through everything and all the possible scenarios, do the fine tweaking. There's just so many things that cost wise that could really just be sorted out before you even do anything at all, which would be such a well-oiled machine.
talking about scenario planning, yeah, here's a very, fun one. We can do almost anything you want with the weather, like, snow, rain, storms. We can even do a sandstorm as an example, right? And then it's like, well, what if we're doing these activities in a sandstorm? What does that look like? Well, it can be a very different experience. And it just has that fidelity to it that
Does it have
not
sound effects?
Yeah, it's got sound effects.
Okay, because I swore I just heard the basket rising. I thought it was going crazy. It could have been some background noise, and I was like, I think that's inside of the the simulation. Wow.
Yeah, so it's really quite powerful with what we can do with it.
For example, like this one, how long does something like this take to this kind of I guess level of detail?
That's a really good question, Donnie. So, as an example, something of this scale, and we're only looking at a small part of the facility, where they were able to provide us with Navisworks files, but it's a very large facility. But it's in the range of about 40 grand just to get that initial model set up in the system. And then after that point, it's about, well, what functionality would you like? And we like to work with the team to say, well, where are your value adds really? What work do you have coming up, which is high risk? What changes to the facility do you need to conceptualize first? Maybe get a feel for from an operational standpoint, safety standpoint, ERT, emergency response training standpoint, that we can help model for you and help you understand. So there's a huge flexibility after that initial modeling that we like to work very closely with the client. We like to have sometimes even those weekly conversations, say, in the permit meeting coming up, we have this high risk activity. We want everyone in the room to really understand what is going on. We don't want people just looking at the drawings, half people understanding, half construction background, half the people without construction background. So let's get a common understanding with that model that everyone can see at the same time, and have that sharing of, thought and knowledge. So,
But like, as far as like person hours, how long would that take? Like from, I guess, the first initial discussion to, producing, what I'm looking at right now.
We like about a month.
I know it might be a range.
It's a huge range. It depends on the size and the quality of the data. And so it depends on how many, in an AutoCAD term, it would be layers, right? In an Unreal Engine, it's actors. So it depends upon that and how much we have to work with. So, and I would say that so we've got some vendors that are very keen on this as well. And what this means is like a crane, company might have a whole suite of cranes that they could give us a library for. And so when you're actually planning your work, you could actually go through and say, hey, we need this crane. Well, we can pull it up, put it on the site for you. The same way with the equipment. And so that piece of equipment, it's almost like a library of functions that you can go through and just pull the equipment you want, put it where you want. So there's a design aspect of that. Makes it a lot quicker too. So there's a lot of what ifs in there. So a lot of what ifs.
And how many person team, like for example, this example that we have now, how many people will be working on this kind of project? Is it, it's, instantly my mind takes me to my technology hat. What kind of individuals would be the ones who be able to do these types of things? And I'm curious to know, I guess, how many people, are you able to use on one project? Is it, kind of one person, one project, or I know it depends on the size, but for like this specific example you're showing now, how many people would be on this kind of scale of a project?
That's a good question. In the background, we can get up to 5 people at any one time who are, by their profession, game designers. Actually, that is credential. We measure their competency through the work they've done, really. But it is always about that interfacing with engineers like myself, Joel, for what is realistic, how things should interact. Because, there's a bit of a gap between people like myself and Joel who have that major housing facility experience, and then people who design games where you don't want the embellishments to gamify the thing. You want it to look realistic. Looking for the right word there.
You can go a little bit to the right, a little bit, not too much to the right, though. There's got to be a balancing act.
Yeah, exactly. Because end of the day, we're making a simulation tool for variety of purposes. It's not entertainment as such.
Mhm.
Now, another fun scenario. Now, Joel touched on this just briefly. Is that in this particular model, we did put the sun in the correct position on the sky for the latitude, longitude. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to swing it to nighttime. And what you'll see as I do that is that all the shadows are correctly recalculated until there's darkness.
It really does look like a realistic time lapse as well. The videos that you see, it's just,
Oh, yeah.
the level of quality is really, really, really like insane to me. It just really does feel like you're really stepping into this world, which is so amazing. You don't think, oil and gas, energy, renewables, you don't think of technology and doing some exciting kind of things such as this, especially, kind of gaming capabilities to, change the way they do things. It's really starting to blur the lines, which is so exciting for the future.
It is. You're spot on correct with that. Yeah, it's changing. Look, I've been in the capital projects game since 1997, right? And so we were, AutoCAD was just taking off about that time. But to see where we can do what we can do now, and what this means for engineering and projects and efficiency, especially at this cost point, because what we're doing here really wasn't possible a year or two ago, right? And so now, and don't get me wrong, we've got some pretty awesome desktops that we use, but what we can do is just phenomenal. It would have taken a team of engineers months to come even close to this. And now it's readily accessible to people that are willing to bridge the gap between advanced technology and engineering.
And how has that been in kind of selling people on this dream? When you think game designing, as a career profession, you don't think oil and gas, this type of, world at all. You don't think of it at all. I mean, is it easy to kind of, sell potential engineers on the dream and just the potentials of, what's happening?
Oh, yes and no. Look, you've got, and look, I would say Suresh and I are unique because we're entrepreneurs, right? So we're always looking for, and then we're a smaller company. We've got to punch above our weight, right? So how do we find that margin, and how do we get better than our competition, right? So if you are of our way of thinking, it's a no-brainer, right? But in a lot of cases, we've got, I'll say, some of the entrenched mentalities from the last 20 or 30 years. Sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge to work with that mindset, but generally, someone who's grown up with gaming, and so we're talking probably Suresh and I's generation, a little bit younger. If you're not doing this, they want to know why. And in fact, I think as a company, you'd have a hard time keeping some of those people on. We actually already know that because they're so used to technology. It's not necessarily a tool anymore. It's what should be driving things, right? So it's not just be an engineer and here's your Excel spreadsheet. Like, okay, how can you actively take technology and bring it into what you're doing to advance not only your career, but advance the efficiency of the company and the designs. So there's a little bit of an age disparity there. And so, but we're finding, look, people that would be listening to your podcast are probably going to be like, oh yeah, we get it, right? And when we show companies that are pretty advanced, typically the smaller ones, they're all over it. And that's why Suresh said we started off as a visualization, and the steady stream of work we get right now is just because those younger, hungry, more efficient companies realize what they can do faster and cheaper.
Oh, 100%. And also, I speak to technologists every day, from, I guess, a recruitment perspective, candidate side of things. Technologists, especially, in my opinion, the really, really good ones, always want a new challenge. They get bored and rolled if they're doing the same things. They just, they cannot be in that same box. They're always pushing the boundaries. And to be in, this space where they would have never thought they could be using their technical skill set and putting everything together is just, I think that is the biggest selling point. You can do something that's never been done. You can be something absolutely transformational, and especially really change an industry that is just so much in legacy. It's existed as long as you can remember. And that's the bit that I get excited about because I always put my my recruiter hat on. I'm like, ooh, I bet you they need some very interesting candidates. I know these types of individuals, and trying to think on how could I find these people and selling the dream to them. And for me, that's bullet number one for sure. Do something that's never been done. But easier said than done always, which I would love to hear your both, interpretation of that.
Well, Donnie, it's since you're from the recruiting side, I mean, what are you seeing as far as your clients? What is their appetite for something like this, right? Because we can go with the old school way of doing things, and I'm just using that as a very open way of saying that. Or when someone has new technology and something that can make something photorealistic and advance their designs, how quickly are they to adopt this?
Well, I would say the bigger players, it's much, the adoption rate is much slower. It's much more compliance driven, much more layers in between the decision makers and I guess the people on the ground that would be really utilizing the technology. But I would say over the past 4 or 5 years, Airswift, we pivoted into technology. I'm the first technology consultant for Asia because all of our clients, and when I say all, I mean every single one is talking about technology. I've got data engineers I'm placing, data analysts, cybersecurity professionals, the list can go on. They're also changing mindset, which is very exciting to be able to share that, they are looking for people that are from startups. They're looking for people that have had that, wearing multiple hat in the chaos kind of experience, because that is what they're walking into. This is not legacy anymore. This is not something that's ever been done. And they're really trying to change and, challenge the status quo. And that is very exciting to me because they're trying to think in a very different perspective. Of course, you have those legacy mindsets that want to do things the way they've always been done. But, AI and data and all this, I guess information technology revolution, it's coming at all sides. You can't walk 10 feet without, getting smacked in the face a few times. So they can't ignore it. And if the big player, we're talking about Exxons, the Shells, the SBMs, the Modex of the world, if they're all adopting this and investing large amounts of money, to try and do some of these things, I think this is where we see the future. And that's really where the really exciting bits kind of are being held.
Well, that's why we're doing what we do, because we completely agree with you. And we see that. What we see coming, more the digital twin, and I use the word digital twin conservatively, right? But the industry moving to the capacity and the understanding of, it's digital is not just an add-on tool. It is what should be driving, because it is now faster, more intelligent, and more efficient than we are. So how do we facilitate its journey through engineering, capital projects, visualization, and operability to where it's the driving force, and we're just kind of like pointing it in the right direction, because it's much smarter and faster than we are. And some of the solutions it comes up with are actually very unique and actually really, really good. So we've been shocked at some of the things that we've seen. And actually, further to what you said, so we've got a client that we're working with right now, and I can tell the direction things are going by the levels of insurance and insurance requirements we are now required to take. And there's so much of it is now data. I mean, like literally, we used to do just like indemnity and liability, right? And now at least in some cases, 5 different kinds of data insurances that go along with that, to the tune of a lot of money, right? So I can tell that even in the last year that things are pivoting in that direction, right? So we as a company, that's right. And also we found that the most voracious acceptors to this are in the Asia Pacific region. I mean, without a doubt, like Singapore, Indonesia, different parts of Asia, absolutely. They're spot on to it, right? Because they're about business and they're about trade and they want to accelerate very quickly. Yeah. And India is, oh my gosh, on it hard.
We think of a lot of projects in India, actually. There's some exciting things happening on this. Some people include India and, Greater Asia. I definitely do. But, there's some very exciting things happening in this part of the world. To be honest, one thing that, Asians have that is very different than a lot of other cultures is their adoption to technology. You see a new app come out, it seems like everybody has that app. Everybody is now using, thumbprints or, cards on their phone instead of, using an actual card and tapping things. The adoption rate of just new technologies is just at the speed of light here. So it's a perfect testing ground for a lot of these capabilities and what they, are trying to do, because most of the employees are from this, part of the world as well, kind of gravitate towards, regional kind of hubs. And it's very interesting to see, companies talking about, some of the infusions of technology and really starting some experimentation over here. And it's great for us because we get to be a part of it. Fantastic.
I'd love to. I want to hear more about that. But in the meantime, Suresh, do we have another example that we can show? Let's do that. Because actually, this conversation, actually, I know we want to, not to talk about conclusions now, but we want to conclude with where we see the new future, and not only how we're leveraging ourselves, but also what you're doing and what Airswift is doing. Like, where do you see the direction? And I clearly want to get to that conversation, because we got some pretty interesting things in that we think is on the way, or we're part of. Yeah. But Suresh, take it away. Let's check out something else.
Yeah. Now, what we're looking at here is satellite terrain of Central Australia around Umua, and it is accurate for as far as the eye can see. It's a big curved globe here, sun's in the sky. But we're going to center down onto a facility that we
and it looks like a picture. Like, I just want to highlight that to the people that are listening. This looks exactly like a picture you'd see, almost like a National Geographic kind of, far out, high elevation kind of photo.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point, Donnie, is that gaming technology has completely outstripped Bentley and Autodesk and all of those softwares, because the demands on fidelity and performance are just there. And so as you can see, I can zoom all the way out and I can see to the mountains on the horizon. But then I'm just going to, in this same model, come all the way back in with very minimal popping and very clean transitions, all the way down to seeing an individual blade of grass. So it's a different world in terms of fidelity that we can achieve.
What that does when Suresh finishes running you through this.
So as you can see, like the other facility, we can traverse the entire extent of it. The road goes off into the horizon. You would be mistaking this for a photograph, but it's fully interactive. I'm just going to run back into the plant now.
And by you say run, you mean literally run. This thing is taking off right now.
Right, sorry. Let me pick up my controller.
She's in shape right now.
Oh, and look, Donnie, you hit on something really crucial there. For emergency response training, you can run a fire or something of that nature. You can sit in a room with your operators and say, okay, we've got a fire, but it's going in this direction. Does our emergency response plan meet this? Like, no, actually, it's blocked off all these entrances, so we know we need to go this way. And there's so many different scenarios you can run with that. And then you can get everybody in a room and run at the same time. But Suresh, take it away.
I'd love to blab on more about ERT, but one of the big conversations of ERT is, if you're here in the plant and this passage is obstructed, how long does it take you actually to get to a muster point? So instead of the HSE guy going to the side and actually walking it, it's like, well, no, I'm just going to fire up the model and then do all these different scenarios virtually, because you get basically the same outcome. And you can measure the time if you wish, or you can create what ifs. Anyway, distracted.
That's completely fine, mate. This is what we're here for.
We go down the rabbit hole so much sometimes.
I can only imagine. Actually, it's gonna be hard to keep on track, because it's kind of you kind of have to be in awe of how things are heading.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because literally anything you can do in a video game or a movie, you can take an engineering design and do the exact same thing. And not only that, but you can design with this as well. Anyway, but take it away, Suresh.
Yeah. So what I've done here is I've created just a little very basic demonstration. And the reason it's more of a demonstration is we didn't have approval to show you the internals of these enclosures. So what I've done is I've thrown in a bit of industrial plant, which is actually a reverse osmosis plant design, but looks the part. And as an example, here we have a control panel. Now, if I go up to the control panel and interact with it, I can pull up any HMI, any parameter. I can bring up clickable links. There's nothing which we can't do. We can link it to DCS. So if there's a DCS parameter you want to pull across the live value, we can. We have hands-on experience doing that with Honeywell Experian, but we're all capable of doing that.
Could this potentially be really good as far as like training tools for like fresh graduates and things like that? They can, essentially kind of, really kind of put their hands on something before they put their hands on something. They could really push a button kind of scenario.
Oh yeah, and just think if you have think about it from the operations perspective or even a construction perspective. If you've got to bring a team in, you can actually show them, and you're going to go through inductions and stuff. You can actually take them on a virtual tour of the plant, and if say it's an offshore platform, you can run them through everything so they have an idea of where they're going to work, and then even where their work is, you can review it so they're really prepared. They show up. They've had that induction. Of course, the real thing is better, right? But now they've got a really good idea of the work, what it's going to look like, and they can get right to work. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah, the potential is just really endless.
I want to talk just briefly about this. So this is the Umwa Central Powerhouse in South Australia, and so it provides power for 5 communities. And so this is a model we put together to decrease the levelized cost of energy, because this is currently a diesel facility. And so what we did is we worked with Plug Power to create a 25-year asset to drastically lower the levelized cost of energy. And it's quite phenomenal. So in this, to store the energy over a long period of time, that we used hydrogen. And so that's why you've got the electrolyzers and fuel cells, which are modularized. And even so much as solar, because we were working on another solar farm. It was a 20 megawatt solar farm. We had to do an analysis of the shading, not only for instruments, but other things. So Unreal Engine was very used, because then you can see your solar panels and where the shading from different elements are going to come from. And you can estimate with this and other tools what the reduction in power that's going to be. But Suresh can explain a lot more about that. And then you can visually see it. So you can actually move things during the design phase and know where to put things, or like what hedges to trim, trees to trim, etc. So you can actually increase the efficiency of your solar panels.
Yeah, no, Joel touched on it quite well there, in that one of the oversights with this particular project was the adjacent project, land holding, which had a very tall hedge. And obviously the PV system model, which is the professional software for modeling this, had not captured the hedge. However, we were able to bring in a LiDAR scan, which had the mesh and the neighboring properties. And we identified, hey, well, you already have a shading issue on the leading edge of all of your panels. Just from this hedge, it might be worthwhile talking to that landholder and getting an agreement on how this will be managed. Another really curly one was early on in the project. The decision was made to put all of the irradiance sensors, so that's like the sunlight sensors, on the same pole with the wind and the temperature sensor, right? Which was a cost saving at the beginning, but then later on we realized, we need to make sure that this complex sensor tower, there's no internal shadings on these sensors. And it took a little bit of modeling, but with Unreal Engine, which does correct light transfer mapping, we were able to come up with a configuration that worked, which you probably would not have been able to do as quickly with that level of assuredness unless you use a software like this.
Can I just highlight the fact that you just mentioned LiDAR, the amount of, you said longitude, latitude, the amount of information that can be, digested, in this, engine that you've created is just, quite, it's quite, I don't think it's able to comprehend, the different technologies you're laying on top of different technologies and just packaging it up all nice into this interactive, module is quite a feat. And it's amazing the level of detail and accuracy, that you're really able to provide. From the LiDAR, from the where the targets are on the sun that you're showing right now. It is very, very interesting how everything kind of can seamlessly make it much more realistic than we'd ever imagine.
When you saw that Suresh was pulling up the HMI there on that screen, now just think that can be in the design phase. So it's linked to whatever software you're doing to run your process. So you can do process simulations, or it can be, like you said, hooked up to DCS, right? And you can know, as an asset owner, I can now have a visual asset on my desktop that I can walk through, and I can go touch each piece of equipment and I can see, what it's doing. I can even create an operator room to where I have that on my screen. So, and then the sky's the limit. Every time you upgrade the facility, upgrade your model, and then you can
This
actually
actually
go through
reminds
with
me
it.
of a question that I really would like to ask that you mentioned, if you don't mind, Joel. How is this able? What are the options or potential aspects that people could be a part of this type of simulation? We think of AR, VR, but is there actual walkthroughs that potentially could be done using technology where people can actually almost physically walk through it? I'm curious to see what kind of scale you could bring this at.
So what I think I'm going to answer with what I think you're asking me is that, mind you, okay, we're looking at a TV or a monitor right now. We are, right? And then you can do this with the VR goggles, and someone can walk through, right? So that would be yet again like a virtual reality game. You can do the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. Now you can also create like an amphitheater. So imagine you've got like 10 or 15 projectors shooting this on a wall in a small little amphitheater in a curved thing. And so if you've got a large scale project, which we deal with larger capital projects, right, and you're going to build an FPSO or something like that, and you're bringing lots of people on board at one time, you can make it as big as you want, right? You could show 200 people at a time in something that's very photorealistic. Well, here's where we are today. Here are the stages of the project. Here's where we're going to get to. Now let's start talking operations. So I don't know if that's what you were asking me.
That was exactly spot on. That was exactly what I was hoping you'd mention, because, we're not just talking about screens. We're not just talking about, the headsets themselves. No, you can literally really simulate every aspect of this. It depends, of course, on investment and how you kind of want to, crawl, walk, run kind of phase. But the options are absolutely there, and technology is changing. And I'm actually quite curious, how are you and the team keeping up with technology? How are you, I guess, staying up to date with all these new changes that are happening every day? I'm curious on how the tech is here too.
I think Suresh and I have slightly different avenues, but I'll
Good.
answer
That's what I want
first,
to
and
hear.
then
I love
Suresh.
it.
But look, for every technology or anything that you've got, like Unreal Engine is a great thing. Is there are boards, right? Where specifically there are groups of people that are Unreal Engine programmers, and so for all the softwares we use, typically I'll call us all nerds, right? There's a nerd society behind that. So staying engaged with that is really important, right? Because there's so many people that use that. But then again, there's some people that we really admire, and we're probably going to get to that. But like BMW, some of the things they're doing for manufacturing is unbelievable. So we keep our fingers on other industries that are way more advanced than I would say a lot are. And how do you take what like BMW is doing, because clearly there's some automotive challenges in Germany right now. We won't go into that, but they had quite a few plants, and when they're going to change a model, they have to figure out what portion is being built in what plant and how to reconfigure that plant, right? So they were using a lot of like NVIDIA Omniverse and things like that, and they were remodeling their plant all virtually. So they knew that it's like one shot, one kill, right? We're gonna take it the way it's configured, and we're gonna move it out, and all of our little AI bots that deliver parts are gonna come in and do it exactly this way. They're using
AI mixed with German engineering.
That's right. So if you look at what BMW is doing, we follow that. And the other thing too is follow what gamers are doing. Follow what the 16-year-old kids are doing to make an incredible video game, and just, oh my God, how are they doing it? So then you just follow that. And so we have our finger on a lot of pulses, but that's how I do it. But Suresh, please, what do you do?
It's actually really hard at this very moment in time, keeping up with everything, because we have this AI arms race basically going on, where everyone has got their own models. Some are slightly better at different things. I know I've got blind spots for industries that I'm not actively a part of, but like Joel was saying, we do keep a very tight eye on the automation and visualization and digital twinning sphere. We're up to date with the latest ISO IEC standards around this topic. We are aware of all the latest tools, in particular from Unreal and NVIDIA, to optimize these scenes and add features that were not conceivable earlier. For example, there are CFD tools built into this program. They don't have scientific rigor, but if you needed to conceptualize the outputs of, say, a Jetfire model, we can create a very accurate visualization of what exactly that Jetfire will look like. You tell me what it is. Is it a two-phase flow? Is it hydrogen fire? We can do it. If there's an oil leak and it needs to show how it would fill up the bund over the structure, yeah, absolutely, we can do it. And all these types of simulations, previously you'd talk about, oh yeah, you get your supercomputer, you give it a week. It's like, no, we can get you something that's fit for purpose in a day. Those types of conversations now. So it's a different world to where we were. And like Joel was saying, yeah, some industries are taking advantage of technology a lot faster than others. So this one's more as a little bit of fun. And what it is it's a little forklift simulator. But what's very unique about it is it uses physics. So, and what I mean by that is, actually, I'll get the external camera, that's more fun, is let's say I'm given a task. I got to stack these pallets. This is me driving, by the way, and I don't have my ticket. Bear that in mind. I'm going to try and put them on this ledge. Now, I'm going to do a lousy job on purpose, right? So you see, I'm not going to quite get there. I'm just going to put them down on the edge. I got to back out. And so we can do these really, I guess in a way, vivid simulations of what can happen. Now, this forklift is a bit of fun, but, we can, as an example, bring it into one of our real site models. Say if you need to change out a fuel cell, which are quite heavy, from one of those plug containers, we can put it on the forklift. We can give the forklift a speed limit. We can drive it to site. We might find out, for example, that there's a speed bump, which you didn't think of along the way. You drive this forklift over it, you'll bounce for load. Little things like that. And when your risk is high, whether it be safety or asset, business, sometimes it's just so much cheaper to have that pre-planning, that simulation, walk it down virtually before you do it yourself. I'm going to do another one. And this forklift, it's a lot of fun, but it also talks to, as we've shown you before, there's no vehicle that can't be simulated. And depending on to what degree of simulation, based on the needs and what they need to show. So this one is a fully physics-enabled simulation, and it's very interactive. And you'd probably tell I don't spend a lot of time driving forklifts.
So what we're hoping is that more manufacturers, for like forklift vendors, pump manufacturers, etc. One, there's honestly, now that I think about it, there's actually a huge market for that. I wish we had time. Maybe we do, but it would actually, there's a great market for some entrepreneur, put together the model for everybody's piece of equipment and all the physics and operating parameters behind it and make that available. Because what I'd love to do is just have a menu on the right-hand side, upper right-hand corner, right? Where I'm like, okay, I want this forklift. I want to go drive it around. Not too big, too small, doesn't work. Pick the next one until we get that. And I think every manufacturer should, or even a rental company like that for vehicles or even instrumentation, you should just be, here's a huge library. Everything's already modeled. Just import it, drop it in place. It's off and running.
Plug and play, just all the plugins ready.
And that should be across everything, right? And then, so this is kind of, Suresh is going to show you some of the stuff we do. Actually, we should just talk about this, all the applications that we've seen so far. And then let's talk about the future.
Exactly going to be a question of mine. So perfect. Over to you.
Yes. So, Joel and I come from a facilities background. And so you'll see a lot of that kind of echoed in these bullet points here. But, first and foremost, there's a huge safety market to be enhanced by this type of software. Joel and I have sat in so many risk assessments where maybe half the people know what's going on, what we're talking about, and what the risk is. What we believe would be the ultimate expression of what we're trying to discuss here is from before the plant is built, you have your virtual model, and then you operate and maintain, and you use that virtual model through the entire life of the plant as you manage change. You review risk, you engage with different stakeholders, and then all the way to decommissioning, the model again is relevant because now you've got all these high risk activities in site again, which need to be managed. And why wouldn't you simulate it first before you, commit your team to be hands-on work? So just flying through the safeties things, we're talking about, hazards, hazards facilitation, walkthroughs, fire safety, fire monitor locations, JHA, JSA planning. You could run this on the daily in your work group if you had to for your permits and work activities on a given day. ERT, fire simulation. we are very closely connected with Dexcon, which is a modeling company for MHF explosions, jet fires, etc. So we can take their outputs and then turn it into a design which everyone understands now what they're looking at, rather than a conceptualized diagram. Impacts of weather, emergency vehicles, confined space, and then one which we are keen to dabble in is real-time position monitoring of asset, so vehicles, generators, construction lights, but then also people. So if the site's particularly remote, wouldn't it be good to know if Tom hasn't moved for the past hour? Is he okay? Or if you're dealing with an external contractor that you don't have good controls over, they're saying they had 40 people on site yesterday, but in reality, they had maybe 2. So there's a few opportunities there. And obviously site inductions and training, very easy to pull up in this virtual environment. Then design, obviously we can walk through the facility. We can get that first person view. We can conceptualize any change very quickly without necessarily needing to have your structural engineer involved yet, because once you go down that pathway, you're already committed quite a lot to cost. Lighting, we do really well. We get the IES lighting files from the manufacturers, so they accurately represent the lighting. You probably would have seen earlier on in the first model, I was just like, oh, it's nighttime now, I'm going to get some construction lighting, and I could just multiply them, and those are the IES files for that light fixture. Stakeholder engagement, acceptance, operations readiness, that's a massive one when you have a facility that costs 20 billion to build, and how quickly can you get to that steady state operations where you're maximizing your production? Wouldn't it be great if you could accelerate that by having people training beforehand, knowing what your manning is actually going to be, because you're virtualizing it before you need to actually do it? There's so many opportunities there. Clearances, obstructions, construction. This facility is model's very easy to update. We can do laydown areas, tie-in planning, modularization, sequencing. What does that look like? There's really no limits there. When it comes to, again, permitting, SIMOPS, making sure that you don't have high-risk activities that might affect one another next to each other. And then one thing which we would like to do with a client who has the interest is actually combine it with weekly site drone scans. So we have a constantly updating model showing exactly where progress is. So if your corporate controls are in a different country and you just don't have that,
that'll be amazing to be able to do.
It's no longer a question of where are things. You'll be able to get that very accurate progress report, and then obviously operations. So again, being part of the permitting team, being part of the management of change system, being able to train people, induct people, and carrying on this work all the way until decommissioning, and then bringing it up again as a very powerful tool for safety, schedule, cost, etc. So, it really is quite an amazing avenue to go down. And we really are looking for people who are enthusiastic, about the technology and what it can do for them. And that would also, be open to having a very close relationship with us, so that we can be part of the various discussions around risk and safety that they have, and identify where we can make things better for them. Because, we always like to drive home, but this company, it's owned and operated by engineers, first and foremost, with experience in flammable gas facilities, major hazard facilities. And so we bring that advantage to what we do.
Which is amazing. This list is very long, very extensive, and it makes me very excited, for the future. With safety, I'm ex-US Army. I was a, combat paramedic, ocean rescue lifeguard. Safety is just really ingrained inside of me. And it's so amazing because, especially if something goes wrong, especially in these type of environments, it tends to go very wrong. And just being able to, have these walkthroughs, have all these run-throughs, at least be able to say and look back, retrospectively, collectively, we did everything we could. We tried to prepare the best that we could. We did all these trainings, these simulations, because there are lives at stake, and it's very crucial aspect to be able to, technology is cheap, when it comes to the cost of lives, and making those investments, I truly feel, really only pay dividends. And of course, you're seen at the forefront. And I'm seeing it, speaking to clients, I'm speaking to candidates. So it's very exciting that you are at the right place at the right time in the right uniform, as it's in the Army, where you've got exactly the knowledge and the background. Technology is at an all-time high and it's only growing. And now you're able to really try to merge the two. And this is where, Iris Engineering is really going to, I hope, make quite a great name for themselves in, foreseeable future. And, ultimately, gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for, one, showing us all this great work, talking about all the exciting things and really making us quite excited for, how technology and oil and gas, energy, all these legacy industries are really starting to merge and, have and come up with some exciting, projects. And as they say, the best is yet to come.
Donnie, thanks. You actually brought up something we haven't thought of, but let's take the applications you were talking about in particular for the military and first medics and stuff like that. And we hadn't even thought about that, but imagine applying all this to, say, a military type situation where you've got vehicles and equipment in the field. You could do all kinds of different scenarios. And in particular, as a medic, you could say, okay, now I've got 3 vehicles, I've got 10 people, and this is all turned over this way. There's ordnance on the ground. How do I act, right? So you could probably present quite a few different
100%.
Simulations on that. And the same way with fire, we could catch a building on fire in different weather conditions and different things that are burning, and you could try something out. You could roll up whatever your fire engine is at whatever water pressure, whatever hoses you might have, and how many crew, and start working it from that level. That'd be interesting. We've been using a fair bit of AI for our information management, and also being the ability to create positions within our company. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not 100% there, right? But we are able to move data and information and follow what we're doing much, much faster. And I think that enough people are clued into with the LLMs that they're probably using it as well. But what we foresee is the ability to take that ability from the design perspective, right? And then put the library of functions and equipment together along with visualization. So we should be able to, in a very short order of time, be able to sit down and say, okay, I'm an oil and gas company. I want a facility that's going to process 150, or it's going to extract 150,000 barrels of oil per day, 3 drill sites, design the process, right? So we're getting to the point where the digital should be able to create itself and a visual. So then you can go do a walkthrough of that facility and you can test operate it in a fraction of the time of what it would take to actually design it. Now, clearly, you're still going to have to do your due diligence and come behind that. But the ability to get like the conceptual design and then maybe even 50 to 70% design within a day or two, and then be able to walk through it, right? Amazing. Or even then, let's say you have a design review and you haven't gone to that, but have those capabilities, and someone says, oh, hey, I've got a great idea for a change. Why don't we do this? Well, if you can understand within 60 seconds or even 1 hour what the change to the design will be, not only economically, but to the schedule and to the process, well, you can capture really good ideas very quickly, or prevent yourself from being derailed, because it doesn't take much for one person to derail a project with an idea that maybe isn't the greatest. But if the proof is in the pudding, then you can show it almost instantly, right? That'll include HazOps, design reviews, and stuff like that, anything with operations. So that's what we see in the near future, is being able to combine those and take this just one step further, right? To where it does the design work up front.
The options are really endless of how, different individuals and different companies are trying to tackle this problem. I wouldn't say one company has the right solution yet. However, I would say that they're very much in hunt of that magical equation. And also every, I would say, business and how they internally use information and disseminate is also very different. You'd be quite surprised. Everybody is tackling this technology issue, in very different manners. And I consider myself lucky to really kind of help steer some of those directions. But it is keeping my ear to the ground, speaking to companies like yourselves, and really understand how you're tackling these types of issues, these types of scenarios, and using that as great examples of what the potential of technology really is, and trying to, essentially, bridge the two.
So what do you see with all the we'll say AI, gaming technology, and where things are now. If you were to like roll the dice, what do you see happening in the next 5 to 10 years? And not that, but how are you going to position yourself accordingly? Because like, if we got a future plan and we say, here's what I see coming, what are you guys doing to get yourself into that slot? Like, where are you seeing the future in all of this?
Oh, that is that's a very wide question. I always think back, I like the ChatGPT kind of example where a lot of companies are now starting to create their own internal LLMs, for their own proprietary information to touch and manipulate at the click of a button. And that, I believe, is the true direction where everyone is going to, integrating technology through many different aspects of their organizations. And it depends what they do. Automation is enormous. Robotics, we're seeing pick up like crazy. It'll be interesting to see how the transition of AI in certain jobs that can be automated will, for sure. And the people that are to upskill themselves and have utilize the AI tools to make themselves more effective and more efficient, I think we're going to be the people that really do survive, this technology boom that we're seeing. But it's changing at the speed of light because, what we're seeing now is, a big OpenAI, they announced Sora, for example, and it killed like 5 businesses, literally. 5 of the startups I was working with shut their doors mainly because that was something a spinoff that they were doing. We're going to see a lot of back and forth with these major innovative machines, all kinds of technology and also acquiring a lot of technology. So there's going to be a very scary, monopolization of what's going to be happening in the future because, we had, ChatGPT a long time ago. I don't know if but the company was actually absorbed and the business was actually killed and they never did anything ever since. But they were bought by a big player and they held on to that technology. So we're going to see a little bit of a power struggle of see if some of these startup founders can weather the storm and, and not, fight the good fight against some of the big players and make us, a bit more equal on the playing field.
It's going to be interesting. It's not boring, that's for sure.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be so much fun, though. I count my blessings that I, at the front row seat with my popcorn ready.
Oh yeah, I think if I had my druthers, and so hopefully somebody with deep pockets wants to throw a lot of money at us, I would go exactly what you're saying as far as a company. I would have us to where we're building our own LLM that's specific to what we do, right? And that way it's our server, it's our AI that we've developed. So then we apply it to different clients, et cetera, or we develop completely for that client, right? A system like that.
And you own the information. That's the biggest thing. It's not leaked. Right. It's not out in the universe. It is very, controlled, as they like to put it.
Yeah, but, that's possible now.
I know. Right? I know we pushed off a little bit, but it was a very exciting discussion. And also, I hope it's the first episode of a few episodes. Thank you so much for your time. It was really, really exciting. Most importantly, it was a knowledge, session for me, especially, diving into this oil and gas arena head first and really trying to bridge, traditional technology mixed with oil and gas. So, I'm also learning day by day about these capabilities. So I cannot thank you enough for your time and, really looking forward to, more exciting things for us to work on together.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the AI to Z podcast with Data Science Donny. If you found value in today's episode, consider following for more insightful STEM discussions. We'll be back with another deep dive. Until then.